tell you more about it, please welcome Daniel Miller.
Thank you, and thank you, Gaddy. Can I take you on the road with me? Yeah? It'd be just a great opening act. You've been so concerned and worried about your children that you're always trying to help them and advise them and do things for them. I did that with my young son, Brandon, probably 30 years ago. I was, of course, a big controller. I was always advising Brandon what he should do, how he should do it. You know, and as a young kid, he accepted that. He had no choice. But as he got into his teenage years, he started resisting. And he became, very dismissive of me. In fact, he wouldn't even listen to me. And for a controller, not to have someone listen to you, it's one of the worst things that can happen to you. But that's what happened. That's what happened. And so what I'm here today to hopefully share and talk about is I have come to learn that it's not necessary that we create these conflicts and harm these close bonds in our lives. And it's not necessary that we lose intimacy with people. And the way, and I write about it and I'm talking about it, the key way of doing that is to let go of control and accept life as it is. Let go of control and accept life as it is. And when you do, new horizons will come your way. I think what you will see, the blinders are removed, and you will see the opportunities that are there that you wouldn't otherwise recognize. And you'll be able to make choices that can really improve your lives significantly. On the back cover of my book, there's a question, and it says, what would your life be like if you simply let go of control? Well, 30 years ago, I never even thought of that. As controllers, first of all, most of us aren't aware of how controlling we are or the harm that we cause to ourselves and others. And as a result, I was just a massive, compulsive controller. I tried to control everyone and everything in my life. And I was really good at it. Really good at it. At home, his father knows best. I felt I knew what was right for everyone. At work, I hovered over people. Things had to be done my way. I didn't listen very, very much to other possibilities and other options from people. And in many ways, as Gabby's mentioned, I was successful. On an external basis, I was successful. Lived in Old Bel Air. I taught at UCLA. I had people, celebrities and other people, wealthy people, entrusting large sums of money to me to invest on their behalf. I wrote a book on real estate investments. So it's true, I was externally successful, but I didn't feel it inside. I didn't feel it inside. I had no core sense of well-being. I mean, how could I? Controllers, it's always the what ifs and what could be's and what might happens. And when you're that way, you're really fear dominated. And I would still, I'm sure, be following that same path had it not been for a series of traumatic events that felt like they assaulted me. And then the final wake-up call was a wake-up call. I remember awakening from what felt like a dreamlike state. And I saw bright white lights above me and white rooms. And there was a smell, it was a sort of a sterile smell. And as my vision came clearer, I saw there were a group of people, and I was laying on a bed. And a voice came to me, and he says, Danny, we need your written permission and consent before we can go further. And I realized, it came to me, this is Dr. Kiryanov. I had gone into their hospital earlier for a simple 20-minute procedure. I had skin cancer right here, basal, right on my right side of the nose. But as a controller, I had missed prior appointments. And what happened, I was under for 5 hours. It was unconclusive, and he needed my permission to go further. There was a series of probably 5 other major surgeries where I lost the right side of my nose, and it was reconstructed. over a 2-year period, and I was out of work for 3 months. But this wake-up call was my wake-up call. I didn't have the strength or the wherewithal to go on fighting the latest demons that come my way and the latest challenges. So I surrendered. I surrendered. I had no choice. I had no choice at that time to surrender. And that was so unlike me, but I was beaten. I was beaten and I knew it. And what evolved was something really amazing when I think back even to this day. And it is the change in my life starting then. I had a glimpse of another way of living. When I returned to work 3 months later, everything was going pretty well without all my help. You know, Danny, why don't you go have some coffee? The secretary would say. You know, I realized that I wasn't as important as I thought I was. My input wasn't as necessary as I thought it was. And so what evolved, which is what I call a holistic way of doing business, and I write about it in the book about letting go of control at work, in which you try to go with the ebbs and the flows of the workplace. And I don't persist, and I don't insist, and I don't resist as much. And what I try to do is act and engage more intuitively with the circumstances as they're evolving, so that my input is a more appropriate input. And as a result, what happens is you go down fewer blind alleys and paths, fewer diversions. I had a clarity where I could focus on what was truly relevant and deal with what was truly relevant. And over time, I was working less than half of what I was before and making more. And so I had all this extra time and energy to start pursuing my passions. I started painting. I couldn't draw as a kid. I started painting, and within a year, I was coming out with some oil paintings that I couldn't even believe I was doing. I really couldn't. I got accolades and acknowledgments. It was like, am I doing this? And they're on my website. I invite you to view them. You know, it's at www.losing control, finding serenity. I'm proud of these paintings. I had time. I started writing and composing some poems that got published. I had time to go back to playing tennis, which was my youth passion. And within a couple of years, I was actually winning some seniors tournaments. I had time to devote to my family, real time to devote to my family. I was able to write a book. This took over 20 years to do it, but I did it. And at home, I started to listen more without advising, without even suggesting a lot of times. And the interesting thing happened, you know, Brandon, who was dismissive of me, as he became a young adult, I had by that time stopped advising, is he would come up and say, Papa, I have this problem at work. Can you help me with it? Or something important in his life. And that was really amazing because I had already backed off, and he was now coming to me. And I have found with my children, I have 2 daughters in addition to Brandon, that it works amazingly well when you can be there to support them, to encourage them, but to not always be advising them. Let them evolve, let them bloom, let them develop in their own way. You know, it just occurred to me that, however, that most of you may not be controllers, right? Are there a lot of non-controllers? I bet there are some. Well, let me ask all of you a few questions. Do you believe that helping your mate clear her clutter in her office or bedroom is going to result in her keeping a neater room? Do you? Do you believe that harping at your husband or wife for drinking too much or eating too much is going to result in their eating or drinking less? Do you believe that advising your children how they should run their business is that they're going to follow your advice? Or do you believe that not letting your children listen to rock music while they're doing homework is going to result in their getting better grades? Or how about, do you believe if you suggest something more than once or give your opinion more than once, there's a greater chance it's going to be followed. So, the control tools. One of the most significant ones is what I call embracing our personal truths, to be able to embrace our personal truths. Now, by personal truths, I mean those unwanted feelings, those sort of what we call negative feelings, fear being the foremost, anger, resentment, our insecurities, our anxieties, our rejections. What happens is when we don't address those and we don't process them, they stay within us, and then they fester. They fester and they build up until they come out. They come oftentimes exploding in control actions, sometimes even in rage. So the main one of these unwanted feelings is fear. Fear is the primary catalyst of controlling conduct. So definitely. And it's one of the most difficult things I think we have to deal with is our fears. So how can we do that? One way, or the way really, is we need to be able to separate the objective facts, the objective reality, from the nightmares that our fears script for us. And they're often widely separated. But our imagination really goes to these nightmares. But once we can do that separation and what we can see is the objective reality, we can start to deal with that reality. And even partially dealing with it will result in diffusing our fears significantly. And there are different ways of doing it. And they really relate to having a proper perspective. And one way is what I call a worst-case scenario exercise. This was taught to me by Dr. William Duff probably 30 years ago. I was in the travails of having owed the bank huge amounts of money, and the bank suddenly called my loans. And I was having these nightmares where people were chasing me in the middle of the night and everything else, and they were just ongoing. So one day he took me through this session, and he said, Danny, what's the worst thing that might happen if you don't pay your bank loans? Well, my credit will be shot, and the bank's going to sue me. And what then, Dr. Duff said? Well, they're going to get a judgment against me, and they're going to attach my assets. Yes. Well, if they do that, I'm going to have to file bankruptcy. Okay. Well, if I file bankruptcy, I'll be out of work. I won't have anything to do. Yes, Dr. Duff said. I have nothing to do, but I just have to lie on the beach all day. And this is true. And as I said that, it was like, wow, this is the worst thing that's going to happen to me? That gave me the clarity and the perspective that I needed to address the issues at hand. The bank had called my loans. I needed to pay them. The next month, I was able to get another bank to loan me enough money to pay the first one. I could not have done that had I gone down this path of total fear.